Okay, Niakoma, welcome back. Mansho and Nawasha, the Akoma House Initiative, and we're dealing with Akoma Soul, self, others, understanding love systems or love rituals. In this module, we're dealing with others, and so we want to jump right in. If you recall from last module where we were dealing with the self, we talked about thoughts and beliefs and where your thoughts and beliefs come from about the idea of soulmating or the idea of intimacy and relationships, hooking up, marriage, etc. Now we're getting right into others, and in others we're going to reverse that mirror. In the first module you're looking at yourself. In the next module you're going to show your partner themselves through your observation. But what you want to do is understand exactly where we left off in the last module. What are the beliefs, the thoughts and the beliefs of your partner or the person who you would be mating with, soul mating with? It's very important to understand. And I know, like for me, I know a lot of times in the work that we do, you come across, I'll give you two gender examples. You come across women, right? And all the time I find women have these lists, right? I got this list, and on this list is this, and the person has to be that, and they better not be this, and I will have none of this. And so they're going on and about this list, which is cool to have standards. I'm all for having standards. I think that that's a very smart way to approach it, but it has to be balanced with practicality and understanding that I always ask them, so what does a man like that require in a woman? What are his lists? What kind of lists would a person like that have? And a lot of times it's just a blank. They're just like, I never thought of that, you know. And so a lot of times we project outward what we want, but we don't create the balance of understanding what that other person would want. And I think in men, something that I see often is, men have these generalizations about what their relationships are. So a lot of times they're involved with women, and they're having an intimate relationship with a woman. And a lot of times I'll say, okay, so, where's this going? Or what are the goals of the relationship? What is the plan? Well, right now we just kind of, we're kicking it. We're getting a feel. We're feeling each other out. She knows, she's free to do what she wants to do. We have this kind of understanding. And then when I talk to her, she's like, yeah, we're about to get married in 2017 or, whatever the date is. I picked out, I know he likes green. I like fuchsia, whatever it is. And I'm looking at her like, okay, do you not understand? Is he misrepresenting something to you? Or is this a conversation that is not happening, so you're just going off of assumptions? So it's very important. One of the primary steps, if I could order it, I would say definitely step one is to understand what the other person thinks and believes. Because remember, we talked about belief being the emotion, what the other person believes about love and about soulmating.
Right. And to see what we said about for ourselves is if there is a conflict in that. So sometimes there is a misrepresentation or a misunderstanding, which is why it's so important to know that men and women we're different, right? So this is what we're initially attracted to, is the difference, the other, the idea that someone represents some characteristic that you don't have, or that you don't have to the extreme that they have it. That's what's initially attractive, is how funny someone is, how smart someone is, just how alluring. Is really based on that concept of opposites attracting. It's really the complement to your personality, but that is also what can be annoying after a little while. So in the beginning, it's important to understand that men and women are different. Physically, we're different, which is pretty, obvious. Emotionally, we're different, but like literally biologically, we're different. So we communicate differently. We have expressions that are different in our external communication, but also in how things are represented to us internally, that we sometimes need to be able to translate. So it's not that you want the other person to be like you, because then that would not be a compliment.
Right.
But what you want to be able to do is say, at my core, I can translate my truest feeling to a man, still be completely in my feminine aspect, but make sure that he understands it from his male aspect.
Right.
And that takes skill on both the person who's speaking or who has something that they want understood, and the person who's listening or has something that needs to be understood. So they have to recognize it, translate it, and then use it. And that has to be successful.
And I think when I think about that whole concept of compliments, I always, being a visual person, I always think of the concept of a lock and a key. I use that reference a lot because it kind of mirrors the anatomy of a man and a woman. And so just for example's sake, if the man is the key and the woman is the lock, you don't necessarily, from our cultural paradigm, we don't want two locks and we don't want two keys. We want a lock and a key, and it's the union of the lock and the key that could, if you think about a door concept, that could open an opportunity, endless opportunity, a mansion full of wondrous things, or it can lock out and protect those things that potentially could harm or cause threat to the relationship. So if you could think of that in a metaphoric term of the emotions in the cycle of relationship, you know, the lock and the key is not the same thing. A key doesn't argue with a lock because you're not like me, or you don't see everything the way I do. The key understands that I need you to either, again, protect my investments or to open up the opportunity to reach my fullest potential. And so that lock and key reference is always important for me to help myself and those people that we work with understand the science of compliments. It is not being just an opposite, but it is being the counterpart or the helpmeet to the ultimate goal.
And in that, you know, the science of, you know, polarity, or the science of the art and science of compliments, is really knowing how to make a shift. You know, so you have your personality, you have how you lead, you have what your affinity is, but there are times, if you're really talking about balance and harmony, that you have to adjust. So it's really a skill to say, if this person is being quiet right now, I might need to speak more to really discover what it is that is going on with them. Or if this person, you know, is evolving and changing, and, you know, should I ignore it? Should I embrace it? Should I run away from it? You know, so like the style of intimacy could change. Their style of communication can change. And being fluid, being yourself, but being fluid is art and science. And that's what it really means to be a compliment.
Definitely.
It could be a compliment overall, in general, like we've been talking about. But it could also be a compliment in this specific moment of there's some silence, so I need more, I need to be loud, or I need more activity. Or there hasn't been any activity, so I need to create some. So really understanding moment to moment, as well as the overarching understanding of what does it mean to be a compliment, and how do you really use the science of polarity in your relationship.
I think another thing to understand about others is something that we talk about. We call it the Arodha Yahisa, or the register of your senses. And really, from a clinical perspective, it's really dealing with modalities and submodalities. In other words, the 5, or as we say from a cultural paradigm, the 7 senses: your thoughts, your beliefs, or your feelings, internal feelings, and then your sight, your smell, your taste, your sound, and your sense of touch. How that relates on a practical level with relationships is just, how do you want to see love and to receive love best? Oftentimes, it's not necessarily the way that your partner is most used to. So let me give you an example from our story that's kind of funny, and that was an adjustment for me. So, Nawasha is a very kinesthetic person, or she had that history of being kinesthetic. In other words, she's expressing love through touch and through feeling, through being close in proximity like we are right now, feeling each other's energy, being connected physically often. And that is, I assume, is very, comes from her early relationships in her family, and then, even her early intimate relationships. The expression of love was very present. For me, having had a lot of trauma as a young person, and dealing with some very horrible things and some violations to my physical person, I had a distance. I had certain distances, or had a comfort with certain distance level, and really couldn't understand the constant expression, the physical constant expression. And so even growing up in my teen and early adult years, living in hoods and being in different places that young men are, I've been robbed. I've been in certain situations where, anybody who approaches you closely is a physical threat unless you know them. So we don't play each other too close, if you know what I'm saying. And so having been in those situations, a lot of times in the house in the first year or two, I would turn around and watch it be right behind me, and I'm like, what I'm jumping like, yo, what are you like? Why are you behind me? Like, you trying to stick me up? I have a reflex to that has come from traumatic experiences. So my thing was like, yo, like, and then on the other side, like, my ability to connect and my desire and my lust, I couldn't interpret. Okay, I know you're not sticking me up in my own place, but at the same time, sometimes she was just expressing love, and then my lust meter went to 10. So you're close to me, we're, and I would be disappointed oftentimes, like, this is not about to end in sex. Like, you just sat next to me all this time just to say something or just to watch a movie, and it's not going to end in sex. So it was very difficult for me to understand. But my point is, it is very crucial for you to understand, as a man or a woman, how does your partner best receive love? Are they a seer, where they want to see it? Are they a hearer, where they want to hear it? Or are they a feeler, where they want to feel it physically? Because oftentimes people say, I showed you everything. I bought this for you. I did this for you. I did this for you. And then the person says, well, you never even said you loved me, And then I shouldn't have to say I loved you if I did all of that. But that's a belief system that comes from not understanding that you have your modality, as we dealt with a little bit in self. But now we're in others. You have to understand what the other person desires, and then be willing to express love in the way that they best understand it.
That is such an excellent point. Knowing which modality you're leading with is how you're best going to describe yourself. But then being able to pick up on how the other person is, what they're leading with, is how you're best going to, be able to acknowledge them in a way that gets received. Because that's the point. Right. At the end of the day, any kind of conversation, any kind of interaction, what you want is for the other person to understand your intention. If you're doing a lot of things that aren't really coming across to the person, it's not beneficial.
You whack.
And if you're not doing anything, you're not really
You're
in
whack
a relationship.
You're wickety whack.
So for this heart work, we wanted to share one simple thing that you can do to acknowledge another person. So this is whether you are single, whether you're in a relationship that is new and you're saying you're soulmate ready, you're ready to go to the next level, or whether you already think you found your soulmate, but just really want to build on the love that you have and not have what a lot of times people say, grow apart or get distant. Mm-hmm. So this is what we call the greeting ritual. So it's really the idea of how do you welcome another person into your space. So now that is your mental space, your heart space, and your physical space. So if you're single, this is a time that you can acknowledge those primary modalities of what is it, how do you look to another person? Like Masho said, if you have a list imagine what the other person's list is, and then say to yourself, do I look that way? You know, like, am I physically dressed that way? Am I making eye contact that way? Am I smiling that way? Am I really inviting my compliment to come and talk to me if I'm a woman?
Right.
Or if I'm a man, am I doing the same thing? Am I inviting? Do I have a face that matches my approach to the woman? You know, do I have a stance that matches my approach to the woman? In my mind, have I made space for that person? And then in my heart, have I made space to even be open? Because what we're saying is that a lot of times, in that difference between being really prepared and ready versus just hungry for something, you might be missing your soulmate just because you're not welcoming the opportunity.
Right.
And then if you are in a relationship that you are not sharing a space, you still can ask yourself, how do I invite the person into my space? So now, whether that's into the car, you know, on the date, like, how do I really invite them when we reconnect physically or over the phone in whatever way? How do I let them know that I'm welcoming them back? And then the most intimate is going to be if you actually are sharing a space. So this is where things can kind of become the mundane.
Right. You can fall victim to regularity.
Seeing somebody every day, you know, how do you welcome them back when they're just coming from work, coming from the store, coming from running errands, you know, waking up in the morning? How are you actually welcoming them back into your life? Because it's something that's so important. Someone needs to know that they're significant on a deeper level. So although you may say, oh yes, this is my husband, you know, this is my wife, this is my mate, whatever it is that you're saying, you're not on a day-to-day basis letting somebody know how important they are, that you are going to stop updating your status, or stop reading the newspaper, or
get off the
stop
phone,
watching
turn
TV.
off Sports Center.
Just for the 2 minutes that it takes to actually welcome someone.
Come out the bathroom. That's my favorite.
Still thinking of how they want to be welcomed. So now, if you are the type of person who says, I want everything to stop. When I walk in the house, I want attention, I want a hug, I want acknowledgement, I want a conversation. That doesn't mean go do that to the other person.
Right.
Because they might want absolute silence. So then if you know that they're coming in, you might want to make a cup of tea, or make sure that it is quiet, or make sure that they can say, hey, I'm so happy that you made it, you know, home. I'm so happy to see you. Whatever you're going to say to acknowledge how excited that you are to see them. But then you're creating, again, the sacred space that shows them that you know them, that you appreciate how they are, and that you're welcoming that into your life. So what we have for you to remember this is just a simple download. This one's a little bit shorter than the last one. It's just a checklist of those top modalities and what you could do. That's visual, auditory, or experiential kinesthetic. And it has a little breakdown of how you can be inviting, how you can be welcoming. So whether you are single and saying that you're soulmate ready, or whether you think you know who it is saying you're soulmate ready, or you're certain you found your soulmate, it's a small, short checklist on how to create a welcoming activity that lets the other person know how wonderful they are and how much you appreciate them. And what happens when you do this is that it becomes reciprocal. So again, that person through magnetism wants to do the same thing for you. They want to figure out how it is that you've made them feel so great, and they want to do the same thing for you. So you're putting all your effort now into the other person, but knowing that it's going to come back around to either what you're going to learn about yourself or how it's actually going to be reciprocated from the other person.
And so, as always, we want you to get to work with the heart work, and hopefully, you know, we try to design the exercises so that they're instant impact. So you should be able to see a difference as soon as you use them. And if you're single, you should be able to get a shift in understanding as soon as you hear it, and write down some key points and put it into practice. And so we encourage you and challenge you to go ahead and do that heart work. And as always, in leaving, we greet you in peace. In parting, I should say, we greet you in peace, and we say Nia Akoma.